In this episode, I tear out a fake wall, do some work for a multi-million-dollar boat, 3D scan my engine room, and smash up some batteries. I was doing some sanding and some prep for reinstalling stuff in the engine room, and I want to move on to some of the aft walls. And I discovered that this aft wall is a false wall. It might actually have two false walls. So I'm going to peel off the first one because then we'd have access to our plumbing a little bit better. It looks like there might be some rot behind there, and I don't want to put it all back together with the rot there. But this was off the factory. This 1/4 inch thick false wall was in there from factory. So it's going to be interesting to see what's behind it. And if this other wall is also false, then we'll probably take it out too, just because it's not really a point of having a false wall here, especially now that the plumbing is definitely something I want access to, and I don't want leaks happening that I don't see, so might as well do it right. Making a winch cover is really easy. Doing 16 of them is long, but it's also quite easy, because really, like a lot of these jobs, doing it the first time is the hard bit. All right, so here's our final design. We've got 4 that are the same, another 4 that are the same, and an 8 that are the same. This will be one of the forward ones. I wanted a slit opening, so the winch goes in here, and then this opening, common sense fastener, but that allows the rope to stay on the winch at tension, and this just slides over it, one on one side underneath, one side over top, and then they lock in. And the diameter here at the base is the exact diameter of the base of the winch. So got these chafe patches, squeezes on there, and then these 2 flaps cinch behind it, behind the metal plate that holds the winch, and clips. So we'll do a little test fit, and I'll show you what I mean. Not bad. The ship is really cool. It's kind of like an airplane inside. This is a high-speed ferry, so it does like 30-40 knots. It's pretty impressive, and the whole boat is made of aluminum. You don't see too many ferries made of aluminum. Got another pot of epoxy to mix in there, and today I want to 3D scan the engine room. I don't need anything super accurate, but I want to make a plan for where everything's going to go, and instead of painstakingly measure everything, I could just scan it with my phone, so I'm going to do that. All right, now that the epoxy is coated, I'm going to use a program called Polycam and just get a loose LiDAR 3D scan of this room. It's not the most accurate thing on earth, but it gets it down to roughly an inch, half an inch kind of range. I'm usually pretty dead on with stuff. I wouldn't go cutting my pieces off of this sketch, but it would at least give me an idea whether or not my components are going to fit or not. All right. I was pulling up the scans in Fusion 360, and because I'm not very good at that program yet, it just doesn't really translate well to YouTube. So instead, I went back to the Polycam app and loaded up blueprints. So I got this one right away, and then just turned the project on its side for each side. So let's talk about the aft wall. as you can see, we have an air vent for our engine box, our generator box, the shower, and the entire engine room. Each of these can be independently controlled, and then we have a forced air fan that exhausts it just outside of the cockpit right here. Now that leaves this real estate for our coolant loop. And that's going to be a bit of a tight spot because we have a heater, a generator, an electric water heater, an engine, and we're going to have a heat exchanger all in this space with valves that allow us to run the coolant from one system into all the other systems or isolate each separate system. So that's a lot of valving, and that's going to be tricky to ensure that it's clearly labeled and clearly obvious to whoever comes in after me which systems need what valves and can be shut off in what ways. So yeah, not exactly super simple. We're also going to have a hot water on demand system. And the reason we want to put it here is it's right next to the shower on the other side of this wall, and it's right next to the galley, kind of equidistant between the two. It's less than 4 feet away from both of those systems. So that lets us not waste propane and not waste water before we have hot water ready to go. We're also going to feed that off of a heat exchanger so that if there's residual heat in the system, the water can be preheat by the engine, generator, all that stuff through a heat exchanger, and then it reaches our instant hot water heater and gets warmed up that last bit. All of these things trying to save as much fuel and be as efficient as possible. So that's basically the entire aft wall of the engine room. As you'll notice, I'm not putting anything above the engine in this big open space here, and that's because this whole setup is predicated on the engine and generator both having hinged covers that can come up and go down. So the generator cover will double as a workbench, and the engine cover will double as basically temporary storage. So there'll be like bus bins and Tupperware and everything piled on top of this. And whenever we need access to the engine, we can just lift it up and out of the way and get access to absolutely every system back there, climb on top of the engine, get the turbo, the elbow, all of these things, get at the transmission even down here. And these are all things that we weren't able to do with our previous system. So that's going to be great. Same thing with the generator. Accessing anything on the back of the generator has been a nightmare because you have to disassemble everything. Instead now, we're going to have all of this hinged. So that is the plan for that. All right, aft wall done, floor plan done. Let's move on to the big boy. This is our forward wall. This is where most of the real estate is. And basically we're gonna break it down into a couple subsections, okay? So we're working with gravity here. So we know that like a lot of stuff can be on fire, can be dripping, can be leaking. These are all things that happen on boats all the time. So we want to prepare for those eventualities. So one thing we're gonna do, we're gonna put fuel systems down here on the lowest spot. That way, if there's a fuel leak, it won't drip onto our water systems, which are right here. And that won't drip on any auxiliary electrical that we'd have. Emergency, fire suppression, anything like that, it's gonna be up high. We want that completely incapable, unless the boat's upside down, there's no way that fuel or water are getting on top of our electrical. So we're gonna work with gravity that way, but coming in, it's gonna be, yeah, a little complicated. We're gonna have double fuel filtration systems, okay? And it allow us to select one or the other at any given time. Fuel water separators and fuel filters. And then from there, it's gonna go to a entire rail system. So we got engine, we got water heater, hydronic heater, we got generator, all of them fed off of the rail here. And then there's a fourth one. God, what was it? I can't remember. Anyway, and then we have returns for all of those things. So this lets us, oh yeah, so the other thing, is just pumping fuel straight back to our tanks, which lets us scrub all our fuel. We can shut valves off at tanks. We can isolate one tank and have it feed all of the fuel back to one tank and then clean out the other ones and then flood it back in and clean them all out. This lets us clean our fuel and also our tanks. So that's how that system's going to work. It's obviously a lot bigger than that, and there's going to be more of it because we're going to have manifolds on the returns and manifolds on the feeds. So lots to look at there. Water pumps, similar story. We're going to have fresh and salt water pumps. We're going to have manifolds for them because they go to a lot of places. And electrical, well, there's not going to be actually that much electrical in the engine room. I try to keep most of it out of there, but there's still going to be some stuff. And then there'll probably also be tool storage up here too. Emergency tools, tools we use often, stuff that we need to grab and go very quickly. We've got still a cabinet back here for that kind of thing as well. So, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking for that forward wall. So simple, right? Simple, easy. Okay, great. Well, since it's so simple, let's get it done.
Bones sinking like stones, all that we fought for. Homes, places we've grown, all of us are done for. And we live in a beautiful world. Yeah, we do.
This episode is unsponsored. Power Queen sent out one of these batteries. I bought this one for $1,000, and together they make up a 48-volt pack. I consulted directly with them as to whether I could run it as a 48-volt pack. They confirmed with me definitely. It's all over their literature. However, these batteries, after excessive testing, do not work in series at all. I've already killed one of them, had him send out another one, and I killed it now too. And they've stopped answering emails at this point. So I was trying to get a return or trying to work out another deal where we get some sort of new pack. I was hoping that maybe they might be coming out with a 48-volt pack. No dice, it's not happening. And they're throwing me under the bus, basically. They told me several times that I can't start my engine with these batteries. As you guys might know, I have a electric boat with no engine. So despite me telling them that, they are not replying anymore. So go ahead and use your Power Queen batteries in parallel. I have seen them run really well in parallel. I've seen them run really well on their own, but do not run them in series. So that's the PSA for this episode. Don't run Power Queen batteries in series. And I guess what I'm going to do now is just cut into this and find out where it failed. I have to double check which is which. This one I am getting 1.776 volts out of, and then this one a healthy 25 volts basically on the dot. So I've put this one on a charger several times. I've done all the troubleshooting I possibly can, everything they suggest. Now it's the point where we're just going to chop this thing open and see what comes out of it. $1,000 battery, let's destroy it. Difficult, you're going to be difficult. Let's go. All right, here we go. We've got, what is that? 6 gauge, and then you got 3 10 gauge wires for the grounds. Interestingly, there's foam on all the corners except for this side. So if you've got one of these, make sure you don't bang it too hard on the side opposite to the terminals. Oof. Do you want to bet it's a fried BMS, or do you want to bet it's a fried cell? I think BMS, just because of the voltage. just because as you deplete the battery, it completely disconnects. If it's in series and the system starts powering on again, it's going to want to jump straight up to, 40 volts. And if it's a 25 volt pack and then it hits 40 volts, I think that's what's frying it. I think it's just not ready for that. I mean, that's just probably leftover solder. And these are, oh, there's some heat there. So there's like that tape's melted. And that looks like there's some scorching. Saihang. First of all, this is the sealant they're using to waterproof it. Feels like a very cheap silicone. It's not very sticky at all. And there were sections where it wasn't totally covering everything. So I don't know. Maybe it would have held up. Maybe it wouldn't have. These are our terminals. Don't love that they've gone for the 10 gauge wire here in 3 separate pieces instead of one big 6 gauge. But that's not where it failed. The BMS actually failed, and I'm not sure if it failed because it failed to balance these cells, because these 4 are reading 2.78, this one's reading 3, and then these are like 2.82. Like the range is pretty big here. It's not great. All right, so there's some heat shielding on the back side of this BMS module. That's quite melted. And you can see, oh wow, look at that. Check this out. This has completely just melted and lit up this one circuit where it obviously had a ground fault of some sort and just superheated itself. I'm not really a review channel. I'm kind of too poor to be dissecting nice batteries when they're sent out. Maybe if my channel does better, I'll take a hacksaw to more things like this. But generally speaking, you could certainly say that I am biased a little bit. Like these companies want to send me out a product that I need for my project. Of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased into wanting it to be good and to work and be excited about it. I always try to, stipulate all of my compliments with, well, I think this fits for this particular application and not for that one. And I don't just say it's always perfect, but here we go. Get the heat sink off of this thing and it can show us what melted. There it is. So with the heat sink off, you can see that this and these two, is this resistors next to it? I'm not a electrical engineer, but those are definitely fried. And the circuit that feeds it has been superheated. It actually cooked off some of the heat shielding on the back. You can see it's like imprinted into it and like melted that. So that's toast. And that is probably because it was getting, 40 volts when it first fired up, because the other battery hadn't turned on the circuit, and that's what fried it. And so that particular, just like that little tiny microchip that they put in there, that micropiece is just not compatible with those higher voltages, which means this BMS is not compatible with being run into series. Yeah, so probably going to order another BMS. Maybe I might chop into this battery and actually wire them both together with a 48 volt BMS. I don't know. If you guys got any ideas, leave them in the comments. We're going to do a live stream tonight at 6 o'clock. It's 6 o'clock every Monday so far. I'm going to try and post the next one of these videos on Friday because analytics, it should do a little bit better. Honey's having a good time back there. And yeah, thanks y'all for watching. Take care. Hey, honey. Good girl. Yeah, yard.